Welcome everybody to the WNBA's writing webinar with Carla Bass. From soup to nuts, from cover letters to post-interview thank you notes. Carla, thank you so much for joining us. Carla is...
Thank you for the opportunity.
So Carla is was a colonel in the U.S. Air Force and is now retired, and she's a member of the WNBA's Washington, D.C. chapter. And Carla is the author of the book, Right to Influence, and she's going to be sharing tips for how to improve our professional writing today. Thank you, Carla. To start the webinar off, could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Just real briefly, I decided to join the Air Force Intelligence when I was in 7th grade, and 30 years later, I retired as the colonel. I loved every second of it. The assignments took me from Germany to Korea to Turkey to Bulgaria and many places beyond that. Two themes that undercut or paralleled my entire career was the need to write powerfully. As a first lieutenant, I wrote and delivered daily briefings to the director of the National Security Agency. And then the second underlying theme was always take care of your people. And you'll see in just a minute how those two main themes coalesced in one experience, and that actually changed my life and brought me to this point.
Well, we're so happy that you could join us today. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
All righty. So, share screen. Okay, are we good? All right, so the whole point here is to make every single word count and every second of the audience time play to your advantage, and you do that by gaining the critical edge with text that's focused, concise, and compelling. Now, blue screen here. When I was a lieutenant colonel, I was a squadron commander in Hawaii, and that was the 324th Intelligence Squadron. When I arrived, it was the most losing unit in the squadron for professional quarterly and annual awards. Why? Because it's not because the troops didn't deserve to win. They were just amazing young men and women. The issue is that their supervisors could not write strong nomination packages. And so because one level up from you can't write well, you didn't win the accolades that you deserved. So I took 3 days vacation. I sequestered myself in a beach cabin, analyzed my own writing, and that's how I developed what I call the word sculpting tools, and I'll share some of those with you today. But I turned that into a small handbook. I taught my folks how to how to write. And this is one of the proudest days of my entire life. It's the first time that my unit swept the awards because they finally figured out how to put forward a powerful story. It was amazing. The other units on the island asked if I could teach them as well, which of course I did. And then what shocked me is I ended up teaching my word sculpting tools, my 1 hour workshop, to thousands of people for the next 15 years. I had no idea how vacuous the need was for this kind of writing. So what I learned here is 4 things. First of all, these are now my battle cries. Powerful writing changes lives because it opens a door of opportunity, which I demonstrated. You could be the most talented individual for whatever that competitive opportunity is, but if somebody else is better at telling their story, you lose. Powerful writing often tips the balance between success and failure. It's the lifeblood for effective organizations, whether you're marketing products or having to use that valuable space above the web page or trying to attract talented employees, win contract bids, win grant submissions. You have to be able to tell that compelling tale. And finally, my personal lesson was that powerful writing is a fundamental leadership skill. If you can't defend budgets, if you can't support your people, if you can't do all of these things so fundamental to business, then you're handicapped as a leader. So usually in my live workshops, I say knock, knock, and I get the audience to say arousing, who's there? Well, the answer is, that's the wrong answer. The real answer is, what do you want? And the point I make here is that everybody is busy. We're all busy. So the idea is to be able to make your point, make it concisely and precisely, and get off the stage, because the person to whom you're speaking has so many other things, other alligators nipping at their ankles. So what do you want is usually the response. So I should have had a blank slide here. Okay, so right now I'm going to give you 30 seconds. You are now members of a board, and you've got about 75 or 80 records to evaluate for promotion. Take 30 seconds now and read this paragraph, and I would ask you as a board member, what do you think about it? So I'm actually timing this, so 30 seconds and go.
Actually, Carla, we can't see the slide. Could you try sharing it again?
You can't see it? Okay, escape.
There we go. Thank you.
Nope. There you go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So what people usually respond is that this slide, this particular paragraph, is very difficult to read, very difficult to grasp any solid accomplishments, because the words are just, it's like swallowing a horse pill. There is no precision in this statement. It's too wordy. It just doesn't resonate. And when I ask, would you like to have this particular paragraph in your own performance review, the answer is unanimously no, thank you. Okay, so still in the capacity of being a board member, try this one, the same 30 seconds. Julie, can you see the slide now?
Yes.
Okay. I put these back to back to demonstrate the difference between what I call fat writing and skinny writing. This is obviously the gold standard, and here is why it's so beneficial to you. First of all, it has great use of statistics. Top 1%, 90-person staff, 9-person team, 3-day class, 300 climate surveys. Detail is just essential in trying to convey the impact and the significance of your accomplishment. And I'll hit that more in this presentation. So 1 is detail. 2, hard-hitting verbs, masterminded, compiled, showcases, surpasses, boom, boom, boom. And the 3rd teaching point from this, I call them my subliminal words. If you know how to use subliminal words, those are also super important. So for example, the CEO, you don't send a schmuck to work directly for a CEO. So the fact that she's supporting the CEO and the CEO is reading her products, the CEO is a bell ringer. Sky high morale is another bell ringer. Surpasses, great verb, but it's also a bell ringer. My star program, all of these are really subtle messages that help convey the point that this is a superstar and you really need to pay attention to her. Okay, so there's five guiding principles for if you're trying to write to influence. The first is leverage. So every author, regardless of what you're writing, every author is constrained by two things. You're constrained by time, tick, tick, I'm busy, knock, knock, you got that. And you're also constrained by space. Very often in government forms have demarcated areas where you're allowed only exactly this much space to make your point. We're often constrained by limiting factors such as describe your book in 25 words or in 180 spaces. For performance reviews, describe what you've done in 1,000 words. So the author who can best leverage time and space is the most effective. The second of the 5 principles is empathize with the readers. And there's 2 points to this. One is we all know what horrible writing is because it's been inflicted on us. And we recognize when something is smooth and easy to read and it flows, that's what you try to do. The golden rule is if you know what's good writing, try to write that way yourself. And equally important is write from the audience's perspective. And I'll get to that in a little bit too. Quantify, I've just showed you how effective or how more effective your message is if you've quantified it. Ensure your message conveys the so what, the impact of what you're saying. And I'll hit that later on too. And finally, revise, edit, and proofread. These are 3 distinct steps. Each has distinct tasks, and you have to hit every single one of them because no matter how well you write, how well you've quantified it, how compelling your story is, if your product is just riddled with errors, you've lost the reader. So when I teach how to write to influence, I do so from the perspective of an inverted triangle. The first part is you have to strategize your story. What is your message and what are you trying to say? And I've got 5 strategies that I'll share. And then at the bottom point is where you apply the 10 word sculpting tools. So once you have your draft, your wonderfully strategized story, then you apply the word sculpting tools and you hone that for the precision writing to get that product that's just going to bring tears to the reader's eyes. And that's where we're headed today. Okay, there's 10 word sculpting tools. You see them listed here. What's word sculpting? Let me explain that really briefly. If you are a master sculptor, you've got a 6-foot chunk of marble, but because you're a master sculptor, you know the image that's dormant in that rock. So with a hammer and chisels, and all the scrap falls on the floor, what emerges from that is your beautiful statue. That's sculpting. Word sculpting is the same thing. Once you have your draft, you apply these 10 tools, and sentence by sentence, you get rid of the redundancies, the useless words, the words that hog space, any ambiguities, and all of a sudden, instead of having 1 page of okay text, you've got half of a page of hard hitting verbiage. And you've also bought yourself an extra half page of space to continue to make that case. So that's the concept of word sculpting. Okay, resumes and input to performance reviews. I'll talk about that next week, but right now it's resumes. The cardinal rule in any communication is know your audience. You have to understand the audience's familiarity with your subject. Are you talking to the PhD level, or are you talking to someone who's not familiar with the topic at hand? Make sure then that you use the appropriate terminology. If you're talking to experts in the field, job-related jargon is appropriate because that's like short circuit conversation. They get it and they understand exactly what you're saying. If, on the other hand, you're talking to people who are not familiar with your subject, don't use a job-related jargon because you're speaking Turkish to them. They have no idea what you're saying. So when you're writing the resumes, or if you're writing awards and declarations or nomination packages, you have to know who the audience is. Quite often, for example, people making budget decisions for research and development projects, They're not the S&T people. They're not the researchers themselves. They're just normal people who don't speak the scientific lingo. So make sure you match the terminology to the audience. Address the subject from the audience's perspective. Look at it backwards, and I'll mention that in a second. But for example, on the resume, you don't want to approach the resume from the perspective of, hey, here's who I am, here are all my great skills, hire me. The approach should be know the audience, know what that company needs, and pitch it from that perspective. That leads into the determine and play to the audience's needs. And then whatever you're writing, whatever you're communicating, have in the back of your mind, what is it that you hope to achieve? What do you want to gain from the audience? Why are you bringing this to them? Are you just informing them, or do you want a decision out of them? What do you want from the audience? So there's a lot of preparation and pre-thought that goes into this before you even put pen to paper. Okay, for resumes, what you need to do then is you have to hook and retain their attention, and you do that with hard-hitting verbs like you see here. I liken this to a boxer with a good right cross followed up, and that would be the verb, followed up by a left cross, which is the hard-hitting fact. So directed the development, directed, executed, launched, broke new ground, expertly arranged. These are hard-hitting, impactful verbs that really convey what you've done. Now, listen, I know you see the slide, but listen, I'm a firm believer also in reading aloud what you've written, because you can hear the flow. You can hear if you've used repetitious words where you wouldn't have caught that as you're just proofreading it visually. Each category that you see here, I extracted from an individual resume. With these verbs, what you want is you want them to flow smoothly, like a fine wine or a flawless aircraft landing. You don't want snags. So with verbs, make sure that they're in the same tense, and that you use only verbs. Don't mix nouns and verbs and other things. But listen to how the first column, as I read it, provided extensive knowledge of, assist technical staff, provide excellent communication skills, extensive event planning, coordinates. I hope you can hear how these snag. It's like a car that's in first gear and second gear and first gear and second gear. It just doesn't flow smoothly because they have mixed it up so badly. The fallacy with the second column is that these are very boring, overused verbs that convey nothing about what the individual did. So listen again to this. And this was the order in which these bullets were listed. Provided, responsible for researching, supported, assisted and drafted, supporting. Now, if you were the employer and you're reading a resume like this, I would ask, what questions does that prompt in your mind? And I'm thinking the response to that would be, what did the person really do? Because these are, and what did he accomplish? These are all very passive, and they don't convey anything about the individual's accomplishments. The third column exemplifies, that's the gold standard. This is what you want to say. Planned and developed, validated, formulated, composed, briefed, led a corporate review of. You see the difference between 1, the snags, 2, the boring stuff, and 3, boom, 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 boom. So in listed items, actually, regardless of whether it's a resume or not, all listed items, you should strive for consistency. In resumes, you need to strive for those hard-hitting bullets. Okay, a third strategy in resumes is identify the accolades. What bonuses have you received? What compliments have you received? What validation have you received that substantiates the fact that you've done really wonderful work? I have an email file in the office, and so whenever I get compliments or such, I throw it into that email file, and when it's time to pull out those golden nuggets, I've already captured them, and I don't have to go back and scratch my head and say, okay, so what have I done? And here are some examples that people sometimes don't recall, they don't remember to mention in resumes: the time off bonuses, coins. Many organizations hand out coins for superior performance. It began in the military, but it's also in the corporate world now. Did you receive certificates or letters of excellence? And if so, from whom were they? I mean, it's one thing to receive a letter of commendation from your boss, but if you got one from the vice president, make note of that. Did your organization win an award? That's also important. And another item that people sometimes don't think to mention is, did you submit your subordinates for awards? Because that's a hallmark of a fine leader. So if you did, you can claim credit for that also. Differentiators. These are my subtle words, the subliminal messages again. So if you say 1 out of X number, or selected by the CEO, chosen, nominated for this month alone. I love the word alone because that connotes that there's something special about what you've accomplished in a competitive process or in an agency-wide competition. These are those subtle words that send messages that if you know how to use them and you've got the justification for, that's another tool in your kit. Okay, we talked about detail in that second example of an award, not an award, of a performance input. Watch this. So Mary expeditiously processed many job applications. That sounds okay, but watch what happens as it comes into focus. Process many job applications. I can't read my screen. This month alone, twice the office average and 3 times that of her peers. So you see how that one item, Mary expeditiously processed job applications, just comes more and more and more into focus, and the significance and the impact of what she accomplished, it just blossoms with the application of detail. So this is one that I would usually pass over to the audience and see if you can tell me where in this item could there be additional detail. This is based on a resume bullet also. Manage a team of subject matter experts studying the continued viability of an existing aging corporate logistics system and provided recommendations to the CEO. If you were reviewing this as a hirer, what items could benefit from some more detail? So these are the words in play. A team, subject matter experts, continued, existing, provided. And here's how you turn that into a much more impactful resume bullet. Managed a 9-person team in a 5-week study. People often don't catch that study part, but if you're managing a team and it was a 5-week study, that's a significant accomplishment. Okay, so what happened? That impact I keep emphasizing. Made 6 recommendations, okay? The CEO accepted all of them and saved the company $850,000 annually. So that's the difference that detail make. So as you're going through your first draft, look at each one of these bullets and make sure that you have told the full story, that you've highlighted the impact, and that you've put in as many details as possible to make that resonate with the reviewer. Okay, so now we're coming down to the the pointy part of the triangle. These are the word sculpting tools. There are 10 of them, but I only have time today to share 3. So these are the most important words, or important word sculpting tools. First is identify and discard useless words. Example, provide with. Provide is a transitive verb. You don't ever have to say with. And when you're into space-constrained writing, it's space, W-I-T-H space. That's 6 very precious spaces that you've just thrown away if you say provide with. There is, there are. Almost always in a sentence that has there is, there are, you will find a good subject and a good verb hiding. So find those and get rid of there is, there are. In order to, about 90% of the time, you don't have to say the to part of in order to. I'm sorry, you don't have to say the in order part. I am sharing this to help you. Julie offered me the opportunity to broadcast to allow me to share this information. So you don't ever have to say in order. Moving forward, those are more bureaucratic blather words because they're redundant. Moving forward automatically means something in the future. So instead of saying, moving forward will improve the process, just say, will improve the process and skip the moving forward bit. Efforts is another word that's turned into a bureaucratic blather about 80% of the time. You don't need that. And what else? Have and has and had are also words that you can often skip. Okay, here's an example. There are many people who vacationed at the beach this summer because it provided them an opportunity to relax. So what's the real subject? And the hint is it's not there are. So the subject is many people. And what did the many people do? Folks often say they vacationed at the beach to relax. My response is vacationed and relaxed are almost synonymous in this context, so you don't need to say both verbs. What did the many people do? They relaxed where? At the beach this summer. So this is what happens once you apply the word sculpting tools to the rough draft. Many people relaxed at the beach this summer. Look at all the spaces that you saved. And because finding useless words is such an important word sculpting tool, this is what I call my graduation exercise. Can you take this down to 8 words? The reason that I'm writing this sentence is to provide you with an exercise in which it's possible for you to identify and throw out each and every word that is useless. Okay, well, I'll spike it to you. The opening words for the revision here is this is. And I'll spike another one. This is an. Now we get to, this is an exercise to discard useless words. So this is almost like a scavenger hunt. When you get to applying the word sculpting tools, you're looking for these little suckers that are hiding there, and chip, 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 chisel, chisel, chisel. All of a sudden you go from fat writing to skinny writing. It's more concise, it's precise, the reader appreciates it, and you saved yourself space. The second tool, there are 3 types of words that hog space. I have time to share one type of it, and that's using precise terminology. So I call this shout it out. It's kind of, I'm talking to myself and the computer, but as you're listening, shout out to yourself the answers to these. Mostly harmless equals innocuous. If I were to challenge you, what's a shorter way of saying day to day? Boom, daily. At the present time? Boom, now. Talk about? Boom, discuss. Take down, as in from the wall. Take down, remove. With regards to? Regarding. Doesn't have, boom, lacks, with great care, boom, carefully, take you up on, as in I take you up on the invitation, I accept. On the other hand, alternatively. So that's the other ways of not hogging space are using shorter words if you're really space constrained. Example, I love the sound of the word numerous, but if I'm writing in a truly space constrained environment, I'll say many instead. And the other is using the active voice and not the passive voice. Okay, the third word sculpting tool, verbs are your friends, rely on them. So what I want you to do now is imagine a hard-boiled egg. I'm serious, get that in your head, a hard-boiled egg. Now make that sucker 6 foot tall and focus on the yolk, because the yolk is the real verb. The white is the bureaucratic blather that we now encompass verbs in, and we don't need to do that. So watch this. Make reservations, your turn. Reserve. Give the ability to, your turn. Enable. Have an aspiration to, aspire. Earnestly request, urge or beg. Have a meeting with, meet with. Provide an analysis, analyze. Is dependent upon, depends on. Gain benefits from, benefit from. Aid in the reduction of, help reduce. Will be sufficient, will suffice. So you see all this white stuff that we suffocate verbs in because we just don't know to focus on the yolk and expunge the rest of these wasted words. So there's verbs are your friends. Okay, now let's go back to resume bullets. These are 3, and I want you to tell me why are they bad. I'll read them to you so that you can also hear. Experience with and or demonstrated understanding of agency policies and customer base is a highly desired factor. The second one, job objective is to fully utilize my office and computer security management experience in a business-oriented environment. Third, responsible for writing detailed standard operating procedures for 8 major functions in the division. So why are these bad bullets? Because they sound like job descriptions. And in fact, the second one was actually extracted right out of a job announcement. And the person added the word my in there. The fact that you're responsible for something, oh, by the way, doesn't mean that you actually did it. So be judicious in talking about responsible for. Okay, so you don't want resume bullets that sound like job descriptions. Okay, next one. Why are these bullets bad? And I'll read them aloud. Demonstrated and proven leadership ability, consistently demonstrates a tireless devotion to duty, does what is right and takes personal responsibility, treats everyone with kindness and respect, committed to delivering quality customer service, acts selflessly and provides support to or encouragement of others. Okay. So think about it. What's wrong with those? And the answer is twofold. First of all of these bullets pretty much describe everybody. And if you remember, the idea is to stand apart from the crowd. So don't put things in your resume that apply to everybody. The second thing that's wrong with these bullets is that I, as an employer, would expect you to already have these in your toolkit. I would expect you to do what's right. I would expect you to demonstrate leadership and treat people with kindness and respect. So every time you put a bullet like this in a resume, 1, you're alienating the reader. 2, you're undermining your credibility. And 3, you're wasting that space to tell something specific to you, something that you've done to make the case on why you deserve that job. So that's why those are bad resume bullets. Now, on the other side of the coin, these are 1, 2, 3, there's 5 examples of really how to resume bullets. Take a few seconds and read these things, and then we'll discuss what makes these bullets so good, the bad ones that I just shared with you. So let's talk about the verbs first. Reported, recruited, submitted, received, exceeded, increased. Boom, boom, boom. And then those are highlighted in white. Now, the other things that are notable, I've got in yellow italics, reported directly to the CEO and Director of Operations. Okay, that's one of those subtle bell ringers. For this global full service, that scopes the magnitude of the organization for which she's working. Nationwide, another one of the scoping words. Submitted candidates on more than 95% of all requirements. Great use of statistics within a 24-hour period. Tick, tick, tick. So she bracketed it. Consistently, that's another really good word. Received an average of 8 officers per quarter. Good stats, while competing with 30 other vendors. So these bullets really convey what she's doing, what the competition is, and how she's excelling. Exceeded quota by 50%, doubled the company's prior placement record, increased candidates from 370 to 700, sole recruiter tasked to build this pipeline. So these are just wonderful, wonderful bullets, and they demonstrate many of the principles that we've just discussed. Okay, so the baker's dozen. I have several baker's dozens, and so these are the ones that we've pretty much discussed for resumes. There are resumes. Yeah, there are a couple other points that I want to make on resumes. When you're digging up the information to put in your own resume, dig for the facts about what you've done. I keep a job journal. If your organization has weekly activity reports, submit to those so that you can keep a current list of what you've accomplished, and you don't have to go back and scratch your head saying, what have I done? Another example of the details, the impact. Here's an example. Developed and proposed a new marketing strategy. That's okay, but division chief approved. Sales increased 30% over the previous year, set a new benchmark for the company. Other divisions now emulate. So you may have the beginning of a good story, but make sure you don't cut it short. Then you have to prioritize and triage of all of the items that you've done. What should you put in the resume? The answer is determine that based on the impact of your accomplishments and how well they dovetail with the qualities and the capabilities that the employer is seeking. And finally, for resumes, the 13th tip in my baker's dozen is keep the focus. Don't distract the reader by improperly used statistics or having it so error-ridden that they spend time counting your flawed commas and they completely lose track of the message that you're trying to share. All right, so that pretty much does it for resumes. Now, cover letters. Congratulations. Write the cover letter after you've done the resume so that you know exactly what it is that you want to include in that thing. So I'm going to deviate just a second. One of the other things I say about write to influence, if you learn to write like this once, it applies to so many things. So you'll notice that a lot of these themes, these strategies resonate. They carry over from one product to another. So when you're writing the cover letter, again, you know the audience because you've done your homework. You know what the company's mission, the values, the goals, products, services, and clients. This provides you insight so that you can actually frame your cover letter. Address it to the individual. Take some time and find out Who is doing the hiring? Don't just say, "Dear sir," or "to whom it may concern." The opening sentence needs to really be catchy to hook their attention, and explain why it is you want the job. Why do you want this? Again, write it from the employer's perspective. Describe your skills and experience, but don't just say, "Hey, I'm a great briefer," or I'm a whiz at policy. Give some specific examples. What problem did you solve? How did you resolve it? And what was the impact? Give a little mini vignette. What exactly did you do? Structure it in a single paper. So you've got the catchy introduction. You've got examples of pertinent achievements specifically that dovetail to this job that you're seeking, and then end with a bang. Don't just kind of fade out like the cowboys riding off into the sunset, and include a call to action. So if this job isn't available, please keep me in mind for other opportunities. And then, of course, with everything, it's revise, edit, and proofread. Now, strategizing your way to the job interview. I love this. People often think that they're going in and they're not in the driver's seat. Well, with a little strategy, you can be in the driver's seat. In fact, you're missing an opportunity if you're not. And this is what I mean. So again, with strategize the job interview, again, you got to know the audience. You've inventoried yourself, so you know precisely what it is that you've done that fits what the employer wants. So this is where you play the match game. You correlate your skills and your expertise to the organization's needs and their interests, and specifically pay attention to examples of analytical skills and communication skills, teamwork, flexibility, and leadership. If you can highlight those, that would be to your advantage. Okay, strategize your message. Before you walk into that meeting, have 3 points that you want to weave somehow into the conversation. These are hip pocket messages. And don't put yourself in the situation of having to think about them as you're actually engaging in the interview. Strategize, know what you want to say, and then put them into the conversation. Infuse keywords from the job announcement into your discussion. Just those are little anchors. Anticipate and actually rehearse questions. So you can't do all of these possible questions, but for example, why should we hire you? Have that question answered and actually verbalize it before you go into the interview, so that when you're asked, why should we hire you, it just flows off your tongue. Can you describe yourself in 3 adjectives? What was your greatest failure? What was your greatest success? Think through some of these more interview questions, because that helps crystallize your thoughts, and you'll be better prepared. Maintain focus as you're in this interview. If the interviewer asks you, "So Carla, tell me about yourself," I'm not going to discuss my Cocker Spaniel, okay? So however you respond to that open-ended question about "tell me about yourself," however you respond, make sure that it ties back into those qualities that they're seeking for this job. That's another opportunity to score those points and tell your story in a context that's pertinent to them. Discussing crocheting and camping, not so appropriate. Again, conclude on that strong note. So know the final thought that you want to leave as you're departing that interview, because this is the thought that's going to echo in your wake as you go. And the biggest part, number 13 of my baker's dozen for the interview, is immediately turn around and write that thank you note, which leads me right into this slide. Okay, so the thank you note. Send one to every individual who made this opportunity possible for you. Not just the interviewer. There are HR people. Find out who arranged the interview, who was your proponent, and write them a thank you note also. Second point here is reflect on the interview itself. What topics dominated? What of your resume was the interviewer most interested in? Did anything from that company resonate with you? Do they have extra programs or ancillary interests that that really appealed to you? That's also possible fodder for that thank you note. Whenever you write this thing, always, how will the company benefit by hiring you? That's how you should couch the thank you note. Open with the salutation, thank the individual for investing his or her time on your behalf. Specify the date that you interviewed and the job title for which you're interviewing, and then raise a point or two from your discussion. If you happened to have found some commonalities with the interviewer, whether you shared the hobbies or cross paths in the academic environment, if there's anything particular that paired you with that interviewer, mention that too. Why? Because it will, in reading the thank you note, it will help that reader, the interviewer, remember you as opposed to all of the other candidates that were interviewing for that same position. Again, conclude on a strong note, leave the door open. If this job is filled, please keep me in mind for something else. Okay, now you've got yourself the draft. This is where you go back and you hone the text. You carve out those wasted words, apply the right to influence, the word sculpting tools. Now, people often ask, all right, so now I have a thank you letter. What do I do with it? How do I convey it? I say a letter, right? Write a very nice letter. Put a personal note, handwritten note in the margin, and then email the individual, notifying them that you're actually posting a real letter. So why do I say that? First of all, if you just email a thank you, one, there's no guarantee they're even going to find it, see the email. Two, an email is just another email. We all know how inundated we are with those things. A thank you note, a little note, is too short. It doesn't give you the opportunity to really leverage this space. And it also then, a letter demonstrates to you a professional polish. It's an indicator of how you're likely to deal with clients. So it's just a more refined way that offers you a better opportunity to kind of make that final point. And then don't delay. And so that's pretty much right to influence, soup to nuts, from the cover letter to resumes to job interviews to the thank you notes. Julie, do we have any queries or comments out there?
This has been great, Carla. If you would like to ask Carla a question, you can go to the Q&A at the bottom of your screen or on the little panel and just type in the question. And I do have a few that came in on Facebook, so we can start with those. Excuse me. Can you reuse the same verb for multiple bullet points?
If you do, I would not have them back to back to back to back to back. So I would prefer no. If you could use a thesaurus, if you can find other verbs, because that alters the rhythm, it makes it flow better. So I would strive not to be redundant with the same verb if that's at all possible.
All right. How long should each bullet point be?
Depends on the story. There are two options. You can either have one bullet that goes 3 and 4 sentences long, which is not good because the I, you just can't grasp paragraphs. So if you have a long story to tell, I would suggest that the main bullet be one line and then break it into sub-bullets. That makes it easier for the brain to grasp, but you make sure that you have a story that's worth investing that much space in one bullet and a couple of sub-bullets. But the bullet and sub-bullets are much preferable to a large paragraph.
I would think that would be the same for cover letters. If you have one paragraph, it should be telling a strong story and not this massive paragraph or multiple paragraphs dedicated to the one thing, correct?
Oh, exactly. On paragraphs, maybe 2 or 3 sentences. Again, a very heavy paragraph is a horse pill. So don't have very long paragraphs.
Do you have a recommendation for how many paragraphs there should be in a cover letter, average?
Cover letter, 1 page. The opening paragraph, the concluding paragraph, and maybe 2 paragraphs in the middle that talk about the substantive part.
All right. If you don't have much experience, how do you frame your achievements?
You may, well, my son's in that same category actually. Think back and do you have any community service? Do you have other options, other things that you've accomplished that are maybe outside of the employment market if you're a young person just starting off? My son thankfully does. If you don't have much experience, yeah, fall back and see if you have other fodder. Have you participated in other organizations? Have you had leadership roles in other organizations? What else have you done? If you're coming out of college, what did you do there?
To follow up on that, I think if you want to join the WNBA, we have lots of volunteer positions available, and that looks great on your resume. So if you are interested in a volunteer position, you can let me know, and I'll put my email in the comments, and we'll be sending out the replay of this in our email, and I'll include my email in there. So if you want to volunteer with us, we want you. Let's see. If you don't have data like 54 studies or save the company $850,000, how can you write a strong bullet?
Oh, could that individual email me some information? It's kind of hard to answer that question if I don't have the clay to play with.
I'll reach out.
Or maybe she could type in a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Can you said to tailor, I think this is what she was saying. You said to tailor your resume for each job. Can you use
yes.
An accomplishment from one resume to the other? So I guess, for example, if you are a customer service person, and so you write a customer service focused resume, but then you realize that another job that's like kind of adjacent might be sales. So if you write a sales resume, can you use some of your experience in a way on the other one? I don't know if I worked that out exactly as they were trying to ask.
The answer, I think the answer is yes. Again, it goes back to what is the employer seeking. So those two seemed very, very close to me in the job results and needing to know the client. So I mean, just because do not write one resume and apply it to a potload of different jobs. Tailor it wherever possible. But if the accomplishments that you mentioned in one resume apply equally to another job, by all means, carry them over.
Okay. What if you cannot quantify actions and budgets due to confidentiality?
See if you can get by and fudge the numbers, like a multi-million dollar instead of specifying the exact amount.
And that is everything I have right now. If you have any other questions, please go ahead and write them. The presentation, we do have a comment saying that this presentation was excellent, and asked, will it be available online? If you are a WNBA subscriber to I can't speak today. If you subscribe to the WNBA's Bookwoman newsletter, we will be sending out the replay link tomorrow, as well as a link to Carla's book. So you could do it that way. And we will also be having the link up on our website for about a week. So you can catch it there.
If I didn't precisely answer questions of those who inquired, if I didn't respond sufficiently to them, please email me, and I'll take another run at it. My email is Carla, C-A-R-L-A, at Write, W-R-I-T-E, write2influence.net. So I'd be glad to try and give a more fulsome response to some of those questions if they can just email me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And Maria says thank you. All right.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. I hope I didn't go on too much like a fire hose.
No, I think this was fantastic. I know we had at least one comment on Facebook saying it was amazing presentation. So I think that's pretty uniform response here. You gave us so much information, and I appreciate that. All right. So do you have any last words of advice for us?
Well, part 2 is next week, so we can clue them in. That one talks in terms of career progression. So congratulations, you nailed the job. Now what? So based on my 30 years of Air Force experience, and at one point I led 2,800 people, blending the ability to write with career progression and leadership. That was a natural follow-on to today's session, so I look forward to that as well.
Yes, we will
one question or one request. If
yes,
I'm sorry, for any of our listeners who might get the book, if they could please take a minute and post an Amazon review. You have to be an author to understand how incredibly valuable that is. That's a sentence or two posted on Amazon for me as an author is just pure gold. Why? Because it heightens the visibility that the book gets, and it's not for me selling books, it's to get this out to help more people. So your listeners can help me to help others by posting that review to increase the visibility of the book. That's my calling now, is to help people open doors to opportunity by leveraging their own words. That's why I'm around.
Well, it's a great calling. We live in a world where communication is massive, and especially content right now. So learning how to actually express yourself in ways that resonate and make an impact is definitely one of the most important things you can do to help yourself right now.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so grateful.
You're welcome. And we look forward to having you back next week. Same time, same place. It will be on Tuesday, the 16th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And we will be doing it on Zoom and and streaming to Facebook. It will be streaming to our Facebook members only WNBA Talks book group. So if you want to join that, you can watch the Zoom live stream into there. All right, I'm going to just share a quick screen that shows your book cover. I know you had it at the beginning, but we'll show it to everyone again. And it's available at all of booksellers. So
wrong one. It's a second edition.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just grabbed that right before we got on. I apologize. I will fix that in the email tomorrow.
All right.
Yes, you've had a second edition done.
Second edition says second edition on it.
All right. I'm sorry about that. I will fix that for the email. Thank you to everyone who attended. We thank Carla for taking her time, and we're so excited to see you next week and learn more about how we can use our words to better our professional lives and personal lives. It really does carry over into every aspect. For our upcoming events, you can take a look at this list here. We have an event almost every week this month. So if you are an WNBA member, look for our event details in your email. If you're not a WNBA member, we encourage you to join. We have amazing programming coming up, and we get to talk to amazing authors and members like Carla. So you can visit our website for more information. Thank you again, Carla, and we will see you next week.
Yay, thank you.